now the latest around the wide world of tropics. Tropical Weather Bulletin for September 22nd. Well, here we are with no tropical storm or stronger systems active at this point. Peter and Rose have now weakened to tropical depressions, and Odette remains a traceable extratropical system as we head into day 265 of the worldwide year. 70 storms have formed so far this year. Looking at the Atlantic, it's day 114 of Atlantic hurricane season. There's Peter and Rose, which are on a weakening trend at the moment. Extratropical Odette has a 50% chance now of reforming, and there's also Invest 98L with a 90% chance of forming in the next day or two. Could become the next hurricane of the season. It's day 130 of the Eastern Pacific hurricane season, and there is an area of interest that's being monitored for some development. Gonna be a short-lived storm, but it has a 50% chance of developing in the next few days before it encounters a more stable air mass. In the Western Pacific, 99W continues to improve in terms of its organization and is now at a 90% chance of formation. Northern Mariana Islands should be keeping watch out of this. There's also 90W, which could become a thing before it does make landfall in Vietnam. Only a 30% chance of that happening at this time. In the North Indian Ocean, there's nothing going on, but in the South Indian Ocean, we are still looking out for 90S, which has dropped in terms of chances, now down to 50%, and it is likely those chances will continue to drop. It does look like we are holding off in terms of beginning the season there. Here's Atlantic satellite. You can't really see much for Peter and Rose now that the convection has really been stripped away, although Peter has been trying to redevelop it, but of course it is too late for that storm now. Rose is not going to be having much of a good time either. And then of course you can still see Odette there as well. In the Eastern Pacific, you can somewhat make out that disturbance that we're going to be tracking there. It's about 200 miles southwest of the Baja Peninsula. That is expected to remain moving northwest and is no threat to land. Will be a short-lived storm if it forms. In the Western Pacific, you can see 99W starting to get itself better to organize, and you can also see 90W in its progress there. 99W has had a lot of models going on the quite aggressive side. We could be seeing a potentially significant typhoon out of this. It's all a matter of what ends up happening. Of course, we will keep you in the loop as to what occurs on that one. But needless to say, Northern Mariana Islands should be watching out for that one. In the North Indian Ocean, we are looking at the same picture as we have been seeing the last few days. Not much going on besides the monsoonal activity that is known for this time of year as we head into the first day of fall here. And then of course, as we look into the floater imagery, you can see the naked swirls a little bit better for Peter and Rose here. And you can also see 98L, which has been showing signs of becoming a hurricane by the models. It is going to be something worth tracking. Could be a threat to the Caribbean. It's a little bit too early to figure out the track details of this thing so far. Here are the Eastern Pacific sea surface temperatures. It's around 28 to 29 degrees Celsius for a majority of the basin, although those temperatures around 27 to 28 are present in the basin as well. The Gulf of Mexico is around 28 to 29 throughout the Bay's area, and of course, as you get into the Caribbean and main development region, those temperatures are around 28 to 29. Same can be said for the Western Atlantic, and you can still see what was Larry's influence there, although it's been slowly getting itself closed off. In the North Indian Ocean, this is what it looks like. You can see the temperatures are around 28 to 29 degrees throughout the entirety of the Bay of Bengal. As head into the Arabian Sea, those temperatures start out around 28 to 29 and then decrease slowly as you head westwards. And in the Western Pacific, you can see those temperatures are around 29 to 30 degrees Celsius for much of the basin, although 30 degrees Celsius temperatures have been expanding. In the Southern Hemisphere, we're still looking at those temperatures around 26 to 27, where 90S is, but it doesn't exactly look like it's going to be developing much after all. Here are the surface temperature anomalies. You can see the El Nino, or La Nina I should say, continuing to develop. Of course, in the Atlantic, that temperature cool down that we saw from Larry is slowly winding away. And in the Western Pacific, we are still looking at those increasing temperatures that are resulting in it being above average. On this day in 1989, we had two systems active. Hurricane Hugo, which was about to make landfall in South Carolina as a Category 4 hurricane, and there was also Tropical Storm Priscilla, which really wouldn't do much in the Eastern Pacific. Of course, Hugo became one of the more significant storms to affect the southeast U.S., and of course it would eventually get retired and replaced with the name of Humberto. Needless to say, this was a pretty interesting day in history, despite the lesser activity that we've seen on the September on this days. Of course, you can find more information about Hugo on the Cyclone History tag found below. Well, that brings us to the next names. With 4 left, the Atlantic has Sam and Teresa as the next 2 names. In the Eastern Pacific, we're looking out for Pamela and Rick. And in the Central Pacific, once upon a time, I was looking for Hone. Now I'm only falling apart. There's nothing I can say. It's a total eclipse of the heart. In the Western Pacific, we're looking out for Dianbu, followed by Mindul. And in the North Indian Ocean, we are still awaiting the names of Gulab and Shuhin. Names we probably won't see for another month or so. Could be a few weeks, all depends on when that second peak of the season arrives. In the southwestern Indian Ocean, the next 2 names here are Anna, followed by Batsiré. In the Australia region, we're looking out for Patty and Ruby, and in the South Pacific, we're looking out for Cody. We'll be back for another Tropical Weather Bulletin tomorrow night.